Joining us now via the phone is former GOP presidential candidate Governor Mike Huckabee. Governor Huckabee is also the host of the new radio program, The Mike Huckabee Show, a daily 3-hour radio program beginning in April. And Governor Huckabee, congratulations on the new show.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Governor Huckabee, you are no stranger to media. You host your own television show, and you are a contributor on the Fox News channel and a best-selling author. And your daily commentaries run on more than 500 radio stations. But as a new voice in the conservative talk political landscape, just talk to us about what kind of influence you hope to have.
Well, this is a wonderful platform. In addition to the commentaries that I do on radio across the country each day, a long-form program is going to provide a great deal more opportunity to go into depth with issues, whether it's dealing with the effects of Obamacare on people or the impact of decisions regarding tax policy and how it touches folks' lives every day. And what we're going to be trying to do is to make this a practical show, not just a philosophical show. Obviously, I come from a very conservative point of view. But what I want to do is to try to help to apply those viewpoints in a very practical way. So the person who's listening says, yeah, this is how it touches me. And I'm not really interested in just raising their blood pressure. I want to raise their information level. And to create a conversation in the course of the radio show that really is far more about the conversation than it is the confrontation.
Governor, some say that you are a natural to become the next big voice in talk radio and that you might even challenge Rush Limbaugh for the talk radio throne. What do you make of this?
Well, I mean, he's going to have an incredible presence as he has had for so long. And, nobody's going to take that from him because largely Rush has been responsible for the revival, not just of talk radio, but of particularly AM radio, and has been such a driving force. I have no pretenses about that somehow I'm the guy to challenge him, but I think what we are doing is to offering an alternative for stations and for listeners. Some people, as I like to say, some people like their soup very hot. Some people maybe want it cold, and some will want it just right. What we're going to try to do is deliver it just right. This is not, some detached position where I don't have a point of view, because clearly I do, very decidedly conservative. But my goal is not to see if I can just push the buttons of the people on the other side and make them mad. I'm not into, really, with my own background, having been a person in office, I'm more interested in how does this really work? Can we pull the curtain back and let people see what really is taking place and why it's taking place, and what difference does it make to me, the listener? So that's what our goal is going to be. And Rush doesn't do a lot of guests. We'll have a lot of guests. We'll talk to people. We'll talk to people that I agree with. We'll talk to a whole lot of people I don't agree with. But I'll let them talk. I've also always believed that if you let a liberal talk long enough, he'll do more to ruin his own position than I could ever do by attacking it.
Do you think that your tone would differ from his?
Rather than say it would differ, it would just be the kind of tone that I'm most comfortable with, which is I've often said I'm a conservative, but I'm not mad at anybody about it. I'm comfortable enough in my conservative skin that I'm not threatened or intimidated that somebody believes differently than me. And I don't feel like I have to raise the volume or the temperature in the room in order to make my point heard and to make it believable. What I'm going to try to do is to have what I would call a very adult-level discourse with people. And again, some of whom I'm going to have sharp contrasts with. But to find out not so much what they believe, because, heck, I know that. I want to know why do they believe it. What was it in their frame of reference, their background, their experiences that drove them to believe that government ought to take more money from people and hand it to people that have not earned it? Again, I'm more interested in why do they believe that than the fact that they believe it. So I think a lot of the discussions you're going to hear on my show will focus around the why, not the what.
Governor Huckabee, I look forward to listening to your news show. And while we have you here, I'd like to get your thoughts on some current events. The Supreme Court has heard an unprecedented 3 days of arguments in the 26-state lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of President Obama's health care law known as Obamacare. Let's say the individual mandate is struck down, but portions of the law are allowed to stand. Do you think that Republicans could be happy with that?
I think they're going to want to repeal it all and start over with a clean slate. This whole health care bill, incredibly complicated. Over 2,000 pages. Nobody had read it. Passed in the middle of the night. Shoved down the throats of both Congress and the country. The smart thing to do, if the Supreme Court strikes down the essence, the heart of it, which is the individual mandate, is to say, let's go back. We can take the things from it that we might think are good. Let's put those on a piece of paper. Let's build around it. And let's put a real health care reform bill in place that makes sense. But let's take it incrementally and don't try to put everything in there. I look at this health care bill like a big bowl of stew. And at this point, the Supreme Court may reach in and say, there's some tainted meat in that stew we're going to take out. I don't know if anybody, if you take the tainted meat out of the stew, still want to eat it. They say, let's throw it out, start with a clean pot, some fresh meat, let's make this all over again. That's what we need to do with a health care bill.
Democratic strategist James Carville said that a court loss would be the best thing for Democrats and could lead to the re-election of President Obama. What do you say to this?
James is dreaming, and he's entitled to dream, but he needs to wake up and face reality. Nobody likes Obamacare for the most part. Overwhelmingly, nearly 70% of the American population believe it's unconstitutional and ought to be repealed. So it's not just an issue that says Republicans don't like it and Democrats do. Independents and a lot of Democrats don't like it either. And the best thing Democrats can do is to have it stricken by the Supreme Court, let Congress start over, because I think that if I were a Democrat, the last thing I'd want is to have Obamacare hung around my neck going into the autumn elections.
Okay, let's turn to the presidential contest. A while ago, when you were considering entering the GOP primary, you told me during an interview in New York that you had reservations about running because the primary would be a, quote, demolition derby. In your view, has it become just that? And assuming that Mitt Romney goes on to win the nomination, just how badly will it have damaged him?
It's definitely been a demolition derby. I don't like to say, see, I told you, but I will say, see, I told you. It's been vicious. And it's one thing for candidates to contrast with each other on the views and the issues. But what's happened in this primary is that these guys have gone after each other on a personal level. They've attacked each other's integrity, each other's honor, each other's authenticity. Those are the kind of scars that they're going to have to carry into the fall, and it's not healthy. And I feel it's been a real disaster for the Republicans that whoever emerges as the nominee is going to have a lot of commercials run against him by the Democrats with material that was provided by other Republicans, and that's simply not a good thing.
So you think the primary has actually helped Democrats?
I fear that it has, and it shouldn't have. The fact that we've had a primary, even that it's been a tough one, is not a bad thing. It can be a good thing because it conditions and toughens the candidates, lets them test all their ideas, also lets all the vetting take place. Every negative thing that somebody can dig up has probably already been dug up. But the problem is when other candidates use their platform as a candidate, not to express why they should be elected, but why the other guy shouldn't. Two things. First, the least credible information I'll ever have about a candidate comes from his or her opponents. And secondly, the damage that is inflicted at that level when you've risen above bloggers and reporters and editorialists, and a person is a candidate and a fellow Republican and makes those kind of attacks, they have a lasting image because now it's being ingrained not just into the minds of, let's say, the general public, but to the Republican activists and the people who are the hardcore supporters of the candidate who ultimately will not win. And they're going to have a hard time finding the energy to go out and support the guy that has been savaged and severely damaged by the guy they liked.
Now, you got to know Mitt Romney on the campaign trail. Would you be happy with him as the GOP nominee? You know,
I'll be happy with the GOP nominee, whoever it is, including Mitt Romney. And I'm going to campaign for whoever our nominee is. At this point, I would say it's certainly looking like that Mitt Romney is going to be that person. He has more than twice as many delegates as the next person. He's got the organization and the money, all of which are very critical to being able to go forward. It's not over. Rick Santorum, Newt Gingrich, Ron Paul's still in it. Mitt doesn't have 1,144 delegates yet, but I would say that he's on track to get there. And a lot of people, I think, have thought, well, you were his opponent 4 years ago, and you guys weren't exactly close, so, how would you feel about going out there and supporting him? And I'll tell you, I feel that I will support him vigorously because right now my interest is making sure that we don't have another disastrous 4 years of Barack Obama. And I do think Mitt Romney would be an excellent president, and I have no hesitation in supporting him.
Okay, some have predicted a brokered convention. Numerous polls have found that Republicans are just not happy with the current GOP candidates for president. If you were called upon by the party and the convention to step forward as the GOP candidate for president, would you accept?
First of all, that would never happen. The party hierarchy and elites would never put me on even the top 20. But even if they were to do that, it would be a disaster. And here's why. A brokered convention is a broken convention. It's a train wreck. And no one would celebrate that except Democrats, who then would know that we have, in fact, reelected Barack Obama. When you have several candidates who've been out there now for almost 2 years by the time we get to the convention, doing everything they can to faithfully win the support of Republicans, and they have really, in some cases, pretty much all the advocates and the true hardcore activists in the party have committed to one of the candidates. So the foot soldiers have invested in somebody financially, emotionally, and physically with their efforts. If 2 years or a year and a half or a year of their work is brushed aside at the convention, and someone who just is picked out of the blue walks up on the stage and becomes the nominee, that is going to be highly offensive, not just to the 2 or 3 candidates who aren't elected or selected, but highly offensive to all those hundreds of thousands of volunteers who have helped these candidates who are now just being dismissed. And it is a recipe for a complete breakdown.
Governor, would you consider joining a GOP ticket as the vice presidential candidate, perhaps a Romney Huckabee ticket?
Well, nobody's asked, and until they do, I found it's always better not to buy a corsage to a prom to which you've not been invited.
Okay. Well, who do you think would make a good vice presidential candidate?
I think there's a lot of people who would be exceptionally qualified. One of the names that I have put forth that I think would be outstanding is my friend Marco Rubio, who was my campaign chairman in Florida 4 years ago. Remarkable human being and a great leader, very articulate and intelligent. I think he's certainly the future of the party, and I would be delighted if he were selected.
Last question for you, Governor. The president's trip to South Korea was to focus on foreign policy. Instead, the trip was defined by a slip in which the president was overheard via a hot microphone telling Russian President Dmitry Medvedev that he'll have more flexibility after the elections and what appears to be a possible deal with the Russians of sorts. What does that comment tell you about the president's transparency with the American public?
Well, first, it tells me something about his arrogance. The fact that he is so confident that he's going to be reelected, and I found that very offensive, and that he would say so to a foreign leader. But the fact that he would say something to a Russian that he would not say to the American people is unforgivable. It's inexcusable. No president should be making side deals with the Russians without having the ability to look at the American people and tell us what he's thinking about doing. And the idea that he can do something after the election because the pressure is off. I'd like for him to think every day the pressure is on for him to work for the American people's benefit, not to work for his own political benefit. If something is right in December, it's right now. Take a stand and be there. If it's not right now, it won't be right in December. And I highly resent the idea that he's going to pull something over on us once he gets his election behind him. And I think if Americans had any other reason, they've got plenty. But if there wasn't another reason to vote for someone else and get Barack Obama out where he can buy that Chevy Volt he said he's going to buy when he leaves office, this is it. So I'm hoping that his purchase of the Volt comes this November, not November 4 years from now.
Governor Huckabee, thank you so much for being with us today. And again, congratulations on the new radio show, which debuts on April 9th and airs between noon and 3 Eastern Standard Time. If folks want to learn more about the show and where to listen, where can they go?
You go to MikeHuckabee.com. We'll have a lot of information on the website, and I hope people will check their local listings to see where we're on in an area near them.
All right, Governor Huckabee, thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen.